And Wolranium, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Cosmic. Hello, everybody. I am Wolranium, and I'll be taking over hosting here for the next, looks like 3.5 hours or so, up through the Mega Man 6 run. Race, not just a run, it's a race. But first, let's give another nice shout out to our previous host, Cosmic Gamers, and to our restreamer right now, Xantoman. Alright, up next we are going to have Sparkster, being run by Nobleboy77, with commentary by Draco Day. And yes, Mannix, go to bed. We got this. Alright, we don't have any other donations because I think Cosmic read Mannix's. So let's see. I don't believe there are any goals going up. The next goal that will be closing is the Lion King goal, which will be closing at 3 a.m. Eastern. So we still got a little bit of time for that one. And personally, as far as the donation raffle prizes go, I'd probably be aiming for one of those perlers. Those actually seem like they'd be pretty nice. Alright, sounds like we are ready here. If I can, there we go. There he is. Alright, we're gonna have Sparkster here from Nobleboy77 with commentary by Draco Dan. And I guess if we're ready here, I will give the countdown and then we'll be ready to go. So let's get this rocking and rolling here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. Maybe.
I will be commentating as soon as there is a game on my end to commentate. Unless Nobleboy gone. Okay, alright. Well, I suppose I'm being asked to give a secondary counter. I can do just that. So, assuming everything's good, and that Nobleboy can hear us. Okay, yep, Nobleboy's confirmed that he's ready. Should I give a text countdown? It seems like I'm not entirely sure how this is. Alright. Okay. You guys are going to hear this, because I'm going to be typing. I'm going to be giving a countdown for you guys on stream as well. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and go. So, this is Sparkster. It is a sequel/spin-off to Rocket Knight Adventures on the Genesis. It is from the same series, so if you've ever seen that game, it features most of the same core mechanics. The main way that you move through this game is by using the rocket boost, and what you're already seeing Nobleboy use a little bit of is the rolling attack, which isn't actually in any other Rocket Knight game. This is a exclusive thing to the SNES version, and it's fairly useful both for mobility and for attacking enemies. He's going to be using it quite liberally in a lot of places, but he can't actually infinitely use it for reasons that I'll explain a little bit later. All we need to know right now is that, you know, this game is divided into two main different gameplay styles. You have these action stages, which are like side-scrollers, in which you want to be using the boost as much as possible to progress quickly, and the rolling attack to augment your mobility a little bit. And we also have periodic auto-scroller sections, which go by fairly linearly, but there are some optimizations we can use in them. So Nobleboy is already almost finished with the first stage, just dodging a couple of enemies and boosting into a cutscene trigger there, so he doesn't have to just walk through the cutscene. Saves a little bit of time. And the first boss that we're going to be encountering here is a very simple affair, the Golden Robot. So this guy pretty much takes a static number of hits to defeat, and the best way to deal with this boss is to stand against the body, as you can see here, and just boost up whenever the visor comes down to keep inflicting damage. Nobleboy on very low health there, but that is the perfect health count to actually finish the stage with. See, whenever you finish a stage in this game, you get the stage clear screen, and it brings up 2 score bonuses. You get the regular clear bonus for finishing the stage, and then you also get a health bonus that depends on how much health you have remaining. And you can't skip that score scroll, so it's a static speed, and you get a bigger life bonus with the more health remaining that you have. So you want to end each stage with as little health remaining as possible. Being how fast-paced this is and how quickly you can attack bosses, especially with damage boosting strats, this creates a very dangerous type of run to a certain extent, where we want to be damage boosting on bosses as much as possible and turning fights into damage races. It's, as I say, it is dangerous, but we have pretty thorough strats to try and handle the boss fights and make them still relatively safe. Stage 2 here, the Steelworks, is one of the more dangerous stages if it's played carelessly. Nobleboy's making this look really easy, but there are actually a massive number of hazards in this stage, which is a big problem because of, again, the aforementioned damage boosting to do on the boss, but also the relative lack of health pickups through the stage. But he actually got through this with no damage taken. He's going to wait for an audio cue to boost to the right there, since he's scrolled the screen to the left and then waiting for the boss to load before boosting right, so that the boss ends up loading on screen rather than need to wait for it to come off screen. So you can see here that it's trying to stay on the weak spot of this boss, which is on top, and then just damage boost when necessary. He's also using a few different forms of attacks in the game. The different forms of attacks that you can use in this game are the sword projectile, which shoots out of the sword. That deals 3 damage per hit. The physical sword itself has a hitbox, which deals 4 damage. Whenever you hit something with a rolling attack, it deals 5 damage. And whenever you boost into something, it deals 6 damage. In the Genesis Rocket Knight Adventures, the game actually takes into consideration which direction you're boosting to further differentiate damage calculation. But in this game, all directions deal equal damage as far as we know. So when possible, if you want to deal the most damage in a single hit, you want to use a rocket boost. But in terms of dealing sustained damage or doing the highest DPS, it's actually preferable to use the rolling attack because the rocket boost takes a considerable amount of time to charge up, whereas the rolling attack can just be spammed very quickly. I mentioned that it does need to be spammed somewhat in moderation, and what I mean by that is that in this game, when you use the rolling attack, it accumulates a hidden value that isn't actually displayed on screen, which I just call exhaustion. And when the exhaustion meter reaches a certain maximum value, Sparkster becomes exhausted, which essentially means you lose control of Sparkster for about 3 seconds. So every time it happens, it basically wastes 3 seconds, and there's nothing you can do to mitigate it. The only way that you can really prevent this is by not using a rolling attack for a short time, which gradually depletes the exhaustion meter, or alternatively, what you can do is take damage on any source. When you take damage, it completely resets the exhaustion meter. So as long as you are frequently damage boosting on an enemy by rolling into it and taking contact damage hits from it, you can actually rapidly reset the exhaustion meter and essentially get infinite rolling attacks. Which, being that it deals high damage and enemies generally have a very short iframe duration, this results in a lot of damage in a very short time, which is going to be exploited very heavily in the upcoming boss fight in this stage. This is one of the aforementioned auto-scroller stages, and for the first minute of the stage, Nobleboy actually did nothing. As far as we know, it is faster to do absolutely no inputs for the first minute, because all you can really do is potentially introduce lag frames from causing things to happen. Like destroying enemies, it doesn't speed up the progress of the stage, the enemies just keep spawning, and all you can do is lag the game by actually causing things to happen, so we just sit there and do absolutely nothing. So every time he exits a mech here, he's just boosting down to start the next phase slightly faster, using a couple of boosts there to get down again as quickly as possible. It is possible to do some swag by boosting to the left and maintaining mid-air with the rolling attack, but being that there are so many lag frames in this game, it's actually possible to accidentally input an action on a lag frame and not have it actually be registered by the game, and if that happens when you are on the left there when the bridge is collapsing, that can actually cause a death, so we tend to avoid using swag strats in this game. So here's the boss fight, as mentioned. So this is exactly what I mean by exploiting the damage reset and the exhaustion reset. Normally you would not be able to rolling attack this many times. You just do it about 6 times, that's about how many times it takes to reach exhaustion, and then you just lose control of Sparks for 3 seconds. But as long as you are taking damage, you can just do it over and over, and the game doesn't care. And you can see there that, yeah, the boss fight becomes a pure damage race, which is a fairly safe damage race as long as you start with a high health value. And some of the boss fights, therefore, we do try to enter them with at least a minimal amount of health to make them relatively safe to damage race through. There's a fairly loose sort of damage route or chart that we're trying to follow on each boss because it is known how much health each boss has. So an example of the damage routing that we use here actually is that each of these gates has 16 HP, so ideally they take 1 rocket boost and 2 rolling attacks to deal with, ideally. If you accidentally contact them, that is actually not a very good thing to do, since contact damage is inflicted to you, but this is one of the few games where you actually also inflict contact damage to enemies. So there's an exhaustion right there, a bit unfortunate. But the thing about inflicting contact damage to enemies is it deals only 1 damage, in comparison to using a rolling attack for 5 or a boost for 6. And it gives the enemies the iframe duration. So you ideally want to, although you want to be in close proximity to enemies, you don't want to deal damage by coming into contact with them. So it's something that's a little difficult to gauge sometimes. So after a scripted chase sequence where we need to not get crushed by rushing water, and we never really see the water because we go really fast, we just go left into the boss here, which has 3 phases. Got to destroy these turrets first of all. There's a bit of contact damage there, unfortunately. And phase 2 is just a single turret. Okay, so 4.5 hearts. This is enough health for phase 3, which is when this big mech comes out, but I think Nobleboy's probably going to play this a little carefully. There is a little bit of improvisation that needs to be done in this boss fight in particular as well, because that was really fast and really clean. So yeah, sometimes you need to improvise on that boss slightly because the damage values differ depending on what you get hit by. The boss's main body deals half a heart of damage, but the metal arms deal a full heart of damage. And they also have their own solid hitboxes as they're moving around, which can cause you to ricochet, or they can just suck you in if you contact them. Like, it can get pretty hairy pretty quickly on that boss fight. And in addition to all that, a mechanic that I haven't really gone into yet, which for a lot of runners contributes to a lot of very quick deaths they take while trying to damage boost on bosses, is that in this game, whenever you perform a rocket boost, it resets your current iframe duration. So if you've just taken damage and you're flashing, you have iframes, if you then release a boost, when you come out of the boost, you will no longer have iframes. So if you're not aware of that and you're just boosting as much as possible while taking heavy damage, the result of it is that you take damage much more frequently than you should be, which in a situation like that, when there's variable damage values going around, it can result in you taking very quick and unexpected deaths. A nice little skip there from Nobleboy, pretty much trying to boost diagonally along basically the ceiling pixel to try and get through a very short gap there. He's also going to use a couple of upward boosts in specific spots here to get up there without touching the spike ceiling. The spike ceiling is an immediate death if you contact it, regardless of remaining HP. And now for everyone's one of the least favorite parts of the run for any runner, the Desert Worm, which this is one of the reasons why it's one of the least favorite parts of the run. This guy has completely random movement and attack patterns, and one of the things he can decide to do at any given point is dig underground. And whenever he does that, it's a 5-second time loss. It can't be mitigated, it can't be cancelled, it just happens. You've just got to wait for him to reappear for 5 seconds. Thankfully, getting a fairly clean fight there without really taking too much damage, so yeah, that was very clean. Could have afforded to enter that with considerably less health there. And I see the chat there. I don't think Nobleboy is too happy about how that went. But yeah, it just happens. Like I say, you've kind of just got to learn to roll with what that boss gives you. It's probably killed quite a lot of world record pace runs for me, which is unfortunate, but there you go. Just happens. So boosting diagonally upwards here, it's something that I do in runs. I don't think it actually reduces lag, but there's no real reason not to do it, so it's whatever. Now, there is a specific route that we try to take through those drums there to try and bounce around those shrimp, but it's very precise, and one movement mistake kind of throws off the entire thing, so once it kind of gets out of sync, you've got to just kind of stumble through it however you can. This is a very laggy section here with all of the action going on, and Nobleboy's health is very low here, so he's definitely going to be taking as many health pickups as he can at this point. Yeah, there's 4 more hearts of health pickups he can get by the end of the stage. So assuming no more damage taken, he's going to be entering the stage 6 boss with -1 heart, which, like, in theory, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a particularly dangerous boss fight. It's a boss fight which actually can deal the most damage out of anything in the game. It's Axel Gear, the Black Knight, who is a counterpart to Sparkster, who is the Rocket Knight. And this guy has a variety of attacks based on like the sword and rocket pack like we do. Some of them deal very high damage though. I'm going to just call them out as I see them. So anytime he's like spinning or using a sword like that, that deals quite a bit of damage. As you can see there, it's like 1.5 hearts. So yeah, that's an unfortunate death there from Nobleboy. The strategy for this fight is to just try and manipulate him into the corner so we can rapidly rolling attack him until he's dead. Again, you kind of just want to turn this into a damage race and just hope that you get favorable RNG. That's a perfect start. Kick is only 1/2 heart and it gets him into a nice position. So yeah, as you can see, this attempt's going much better. It just kind of happens like that sometimes. The silly thing is that Axel Gear actually never used his worst attack in those 2 attempts, because we have our own rocket boost. Axel also has a rocket boost of his own. It goes slower than ours, so you actually have time to react to it, thankfully. And we are very thankful for that, because it deals 2 hearts of damage whenever you contact it. And bearing in mind what I said about using your own rocket boost, resetting your iframes, depending on if you do an action on reflex or if you just don't anticipate it at the right time, it's possible to get contacted by it more than once. So from full health, it's possible for that attack to do over half your full health inside 1 second. So that's just one of the many ways in which that fight can go very, very badly. Thankfully though, as you saw that Nobleboy did respawn just before the boss fight, the game isn't particularly lenient in terms of mid-stage checkpoints. Like, if you die in a stage, chances are you're going to go back quite a ways through the stage. But whenever you die in a boss fight, the checkpoint is generally just before when the boss fight starts, with a couple of exceptions. So, auto-scroller stage 2, Electric Boogaloo. But as much as it's an auto-scroller where we can just sit in the top left and do nothing, the boss fight of this stage is one of the most threatening parts of any run. It's another fight against Axel Gear, same as stage 6, but we're both going to be in robot mech suits. It's like a Rock'em Sock'em robot duel in space, and it uses an entirely different set of mechanics to the rest of the game. It's mechanics that the game does absolutely nothing to explain, and yeah, the controls are completely different. They're extremely slippery. It's extremely hard to handle. And Axel, being a broken AI, he actually has extremely pinpoint precise control of his mech. So he can deal damage to you extremely efficiently. The problem is that the game gives you no information as to how the damage values actually work in this fight. Nobody knew how the damage worked in this fight until I did some digging around in like RAM Viewer and actually had to pinpoint the memory values that determine health and damage and stuff. It's speedrunning, like, don't speedrun, kids. Be a doctor or a lawyer. It's not good stuff. So ideally you want to move to the right there to avoid a bit of damage there, but this upcoming mini-fight does provide a couple of hearts of health pickup, so it shouldn't be a big deal if Nobleboy, as long as he comes out of this with maximum health. So to finish giving some details of the upcoming boss fight, as I mentioned, essentially you deal damage to the mech by using a left and a right punch, which is on L and R respectively. You can repeatedly spam a jab, like you can just keep doing lefts, but it's not very damage efficient. The base damage value is a specific value, and if you keep repeatedly spamming a jab, it will diminish the amount of damage you do with each hit. Whereas if you use alternating hits, such as if you follow up a left immediately with a right, it will actually do considerably increased damage. And this is one of the reasons why when you fight the boss, you often get taken down very quickly, because if he uses a berserk rush where he's chaining lefts and rights together, he does them in a very specific rhythm where he's maximizing his damage output, and you just die very quickly and there's nothing you can really do about it. The thing is though, for all intents and purposes, both your mech and the boss's mech are identical in terms of stats. So in other words, as quickly as he destroys you, it's correspondingly true that you can also kill the boss just as quickly if you are as accurate as him. No human is really going to have the accuracy of the boss, but we have a strat which hopes to pin him in the left corner for the first part of the fight, and then try and get him into a second phase where his attacks are going to be more telegraphed so he can exploit them for more pot shots. You're going to see that Nobleboy is going to follow a pattern of missing his lefts on purpose, then immediately following up with rights. And the idea is that we want to get him to low health, so that he enters a berserk rush when he's at critical health, whilst we still have high health. And at that point we will be able to pretty effectively damage race him, so that even though he's trying to tear us apart, we should be able to kill him first. Okay, so now he's turtling up. This does sometimes happen when you reach phase 2 and don't deal enough damage quickly enough, but we can also destroy an arm. This also impedes his ability to damage us, so it makes the fight much safer, and there we go. So it looks pretty simple, but as I say, I urge anyone to really give this game a go, reach this point, and give this boss fight a go, specifically. Like, trust me, it looked really easy there. That is one of the most dangerous parts of the game. I know a lot of people who have chosen not to speedrun this game because of this boss fight, and even casually, people used to say, like, in casual play, this game's really good, except this one boss fight ruins the whole game for me. It's like, it's really, really not good in terms of being able to consistently deal with it. So here we are, last stage already, actually, stage 8, with some beautiful pseudo 3D rendered graphics on these missiles. You do have to hold down to hide in these little cubbies, otherwise contacting the missiles in a way where they actually crush you does immediately kill you. So although you can let them push you, you cannot be quote-unquote crushed by them at any point, because it's just an instant death. Coming into the first mini-boss of the stage. Stage 8 itself is fairly short, but there are a lot of mini-boss fights. So that's the first one, which is very quick and easy. The second one that's going to be coming up in a couple of hallways' time, though, is also, I think a lot of runners would agree, one of the most difficult parts of this game. It is the core, and there's quite a lot of moving parts to this fight, both figuratively and literally. The objective of this fight is there's these 4 blue crystals. We need to destroy these crystals. And ideally, it's going to be 1 rocket boost plus 4 rolling attacks on each crystal. There's also these yellow rings that are now rotating around. The yellow rings are actually our best friend in terms of damage boosting. Nobleboy is already doing a lot of damage, like the crystals are starting to go down, but you can see his health is also depleting really rapidly here. What's happening is that the blue crystals deal a full heart of damage every time you contact them, and the yellow rings only deal half a heart of damage every time you contact them. So even though you're trying to just roll attack as much as possible, stay in contact with the blue crystals, if you can help it, you want to take damage on the yellow rings, and that's very difficult to gauge. And again, when you roll attack, you lose your iframes, so you can accidentally take too much damage, and yada yada, and that's another fight that can go really, really badly in the wrong circumstances. But ascending up the last set of corridors and straight through this tube is actually going on to the last boss fight. It's like it's a fast-paced game. Like, you can't hang around with this game, otherwise it's like, yeah, you will miss everything that goes on. So all you need to know about this boss is it's extremely random. If you get the wrong attack patterns from this guy, there's almost nothing you can do to avoid a death. So we're going to try to roll attack a lot, but it's not exactly safe, and he's going to be moderating his health. Time is going to be when the boss explodes, assuming there's no simultaneous death. That's not safe. Oh, he's playing super safe here. I don't blame him. Time. Oh, wow, that was a fortunate finish. That was a really fortunate finish, in that he didn't get the wrong attacks at the worst moment. The final boss only deals damage in full heart increments, so Nobleboy was 1 hit from death there, and I do think it was the correct call to play as safe as possible there. Like, if you're at minimal health there and you get the flame breath attack along the floor, unless the game's lagging hard, there's not really enough time to react to that and get airborne, so I think that was a good call. And 1950, a sub-20 time in a marathon, that is extremely respectful. Like, that is a very good marathon run. Anything that's like sub-20 in a marathon for this game is very good, especially considering there was a death in stage 6. So yeah, to say that it was not a deathless run and still a sub-20, that the rest of the run was extremely clean. Like, that was very good. Definitely gets my seal of approval. It's a good game. It's a good game. It's a good speed game. Please run this game. Just do it.
All right, thank you, Dracodan, for the amazing commentary. That was awesome. I learned more about this game than I thought I was going to be learning. I mean, that was amazing. And an awesome run by Nobleboy. So let's really follow both of these guys.